So today's going to get a little bit heavy.
Yeah, we're not like telling the most embarrassing stories today, are we?
No, but what we are talking about is a little bit about trying to find out who your children are. And a little bit of it segues into
who we are.
Yeah. And so some of this is going to be going to get a little bit deep and emotional. And so hopefully you're okay with that, because life can't always be about laughs and giggles and most embarrassing moments, but
it's got to get real.
Sometimes
and, it needs to the issues with our kids and with ourselves, that's real.
That's real.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
So let's do it.
You're listening to Fit and Hippie with Dory and Lori. The show is about the show that covers the show that gets into
exactly.
Hello.
We've been talking about some heavy subjects before we've ever turned on the microphone, and it's been interesting and it's been tough. We've been walking through some hard things. I've been walking through some hard things.
I think we all walk through hard things,
yeah.
And we want to always put on our best, face. And it's certainly on our podcast. I've often said, Lori, we've got to have this energy because that's what people are listening to. But the truth is, I think you're listening to us because we tell real stories.
Yeah.
And we talk about like real stuff. And tonight when we were talking about some stuff that started to get a little heavy, and heavy's maybe a harsh word, but real maybe.
Yeah.
You brought up something that I never would have thought of, and we were talking about our kids.
Yeah.
And how do you get to know your kids when they're adults? Like, it's one thing when they're kids, right. And sometimes you don't even know them when they're children, but certainly, you watch them as they're growing, but how do you get to know them when they're adults? And you said to me, I was talking about my daughter and some of the choices that both of my kids have made, and how in the face of what I've gone through, what I wish that I could do for them, and I want to fix this, and I wish I could help them do this. The truth is, they have to do things for themselves.
Yeah. To choose for themselves.
Yes. And you said to me, have you ever asked your daughter, what has she learned in the last year?
Yeah, and it came out of my encounter with my daughter here within the last few days, and how we sat down and she just started telling me, I'm so grateful that she said, Mom, I know that the way you raised us, you had the best intention in mind, but it doesn't mean that they don't have issues they have to struggle through. And her dad died when she was 12 or 13. At that time, she decided to just shut off her emotions. She was like, I don't want to feel this.
Now, wait a minute. This is what she told you.
This is what she told me.
Okay, so tell it like she's telling you. Because when you told me, you were telling me how she was saying it to you.
Okay, she was saying, when my dad died, I just shut off my emotions. I wanted to be the happy child, the funny one, the one that I just pretended. And I did not allow emotion to enter into my thinking. I didn't allow my emotions to influence me. I just shut them all off. And she said within the last maybe 3 or 4 years, she's given herself permission to feel things again. So she's given herself permission to, if she's sad, to feel sad. And she said, Mom, if I feel sad, I let myself eat a quart of ice cream and watch movies and blow my nose on a whole box of Kleenex. I let myself do that. But she said the next day, I give myself that day. The next day, I get up and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to change this? What am I going to do today that's going to resolve this issue? But she gives herself permission to feel. And she said before this process that she came to, she didn't give herself permission to feel. She took this last 3 or 4 years to give herself permission to feel things in her life. And because of that, she is pursuing a career in voice acting. So she did a monologue, and in this monologue, she had some very serious emotion to portray. So she said in this monologue, she portrayed this emotion it became her. She felt it. She
had somewhere she could go into
her gut.
Right. She could go
and
into
she
and tap
cried,
into that.
and she said other people were ready to cry, and she was very encouraged by her monologue.
Wow.
I mean, the man who was doing the workshop said, "You are amazing. You need to keep doing this because you're very talented." And she said, "Mom, this would not have happened if I had not given myself the permission these few years before to feel the emotions I needed to feel." I had no idea she was going through this.
Wow.
And so for her to tell me that I was so proud of her, that she allowed herself to process, to feel, to give herself the okay that emotions, and even if they seem negative, were all right. But she didn't stay in them. She got herself out of it. Mm-hmm. She found a way to work through it. It was a very positive experience for her. And for me to hear her say that as a mother was encouraging. And I was so proud of her for her awareness of herself and for her to walk through that. And then she had friends that she was encouraging. And she was telling me how, gratefulness has been a big part of her life, and to be grateful for small things. And so she's encouraged, and someone else had encouraged her to be grateful. Now she encourages her friends to be grateful, and how it has changed their lives, and so changed her life, because she's been able to influence them in a life of gratefulness rather than seeing all the negative. These are things that, unless she would have told me this, I would not have known.
Well, how did that conversation even come up?
I think my kids are very much communicators. I can't remember how exactly it started, but I decided in my own head as a mother, because as a mother, we want to give advice. We want to, just be quiet and listen to what she had to say.
Oh, no, I don't want to be quiet. I want to just give advice.
I decided to just be quiet and listen to what she had to say. And so she started telling me all these things, and I just
So you didn't have to pull it out?
Nope.
You didn't ask her the question
But not all kids are that way. My kids are more verbal processors. Mm-hmm. They're probably, in general, most of my kids, not all of them, but they tend to be, especially her, is more of a vocal, verbal processor. I think for her, that is a way for me to just be quiet and listen. She was able to tell me things that I may not have heard if I was just talking.
Yeah, I have a tendency to go straight to my advice. It's
we
funny.
do, because we have so much experience as mothers. We want to tell our kids what they should do, how to avoid these pitfalls.
Well, and it'll make us happy, right? And ultimately, if my kids do what I tell them, then I'll be happy.
I know.
And then right. But I know there has been times before in the past, my daughter will call me and she'll go off on whatever it is that she's feeling. And then I'll just start telling her what she should do. And she'll be like, "Mom, you need to stop. I just need you to listen to me. I'm not always calling for your advice."
We don't listen enough.
I learned that a long time ago, and yet I still don't sometimes think to ask them. I try to "How's your day been? So what do you think about that?" I'm getting better at that. But I really liked today when you said to me, "Have you asked, what have you learned in the last year?" I think that's huge question. And then to just sit back and let them talk, because sometimes it'll take them a minute, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes my daughter will call me and I can tell she's upset and she doesn't want to say, and I'll be like, "Are you sure?" And then if I just stay quiet, she'll start to talk.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm always lost because I don't have a degree in psychology.
Which most of us don't.
I don't sometimes know the right questions. I just go straight to wanting to fix.
Yeah.
And I realize there's nobody here fixing my life. Right? Like, I'm having to figure it out. So why am I trying to fix their lives or anybody else unless they ask, right? I'm working really hard on both of my kids on letting them say what it is that they need to say, and then trying to let them talk it out, and then maybe asking questions like, not the armchair, so how does that make you feel?
Right.
What do you think about that? But I've even asked, like, well, do you need my help with that? Would you like my opinion?
Yeah.
Instead of inserting it.
Well, I think when we come to the point where we say, and we give them permission to tell us what they've been experiencing, what they've been going through this last year, what they've been struggling with, what they've been learning, it's a different place where we want to help them. We want to fix them. We want to make it easier for them. We want to, rather than listening to the struggles they've worked through, the things that they've developed. And ultimately, that's what we want. We want them to work through these processes and get to a point where they're learning something.
Well, we've all been there, right?
We just don't always ask the right questions.
Yeah.
As mothers, we want to facilitate. We want to help. We want to move them forward. We want to, but their process is their process.
And it might not be ours, right?
Right.
And we, we were all there.
Yeah.
We've been there.
Yeah.
I still think it's funny how, like, I'll sit sometimes with my 90-year-old, I call her my guru, my very dear, dear friend, and I've known her for over 10 years now. I've asked her questions before about certain situations, and she'll be, oh, I remember that when I was in my 40s.
Yeah.
Or, I remember when I was in my 50s, I worried about that. And what it makes me realize is by the time you get to be 90, some of these things that you and I in our 50s are processing, and then our kids that are in their 30s or their 20s or teens even are processing, it's not that they're invalid. It's the circle of life, basically. Right. They have to process them.
Yeah.
And hopefully what we can do is we can be there to ask the right questions.
Right.
And I don't really know how you learn those other than sitting around and talking about them with other people.
Right. Well, and validating their process. I think
validating it.
As mothers, we can take that opportunity to validate their processes. So in some way say, what's going on? I'm so proud of you for working through this,
and
for
figuring it out,
what you're doing. For I know it's been hard. I know that, as a mother, we've talked about this, how, my kids have had it hard. They've had a hard upbringing. They've had to work through things. And I just came to the realization that I'm actually thankful for that they've had to struggle through things so that as adults, they have coping skills.
And they're resilient.
They learn how to be tenacious. They learn how to work through things that are hard. Where people who have it easy when they're younger, it's much more difficult for them to learn how to have those skills. So I am very grateful that they have those skills because it's not been easy for them. When they tell me and they verbalize to me the things that they've learned, the struggles they've gone through, I have to put aside my own feelings of guilt. I have to put aside my own feelings of responsibility and let them feel those things and let them work through those things and allow the way that they were raised to help them become better people. And it's hard when you're a mother and you've raised your kids and you've done the best that you can, but realize that some of the things that you've done still gives your children issues. That's difficult because you feel guilty that they have issues because of the way you raised them and you did the best you could.
Well, nobody comes out of childhood unscathed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I don't care.
Right.
Even if you've had the perfect, what we would like in our society think is the perfect, nobody comes out unscathed in the sense that, we all are born into this world with whatever personalities. Most of us do the best that we can as parents. We do what we know.
Yeah.
And
with what we've been given.
And maybe even how we were brought up. And then we even say, like, I remember saying, well, I'm never doing that with my kids.
Right.
Or whatever. And then the next thing you know, something's coming out of my mouth and I turn around to see if my
mother
mom is there. Right? It's like, I swear to you, that's my mom right there. But the truth is, like, they still have to figure it out just as we do. Like, there was some stuff that you were saying that your daughter was going through and